All right, what's up, guys? Welcome back to my podcast. Today, we're going to be talking a lot of strength training and a little bit of injury rehab. And today, I'm with my boy Nabba from URI as well. Nabba, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I go to URI. I'm a kinesiology student. I'm pursuing my bachelor's in undergrad right now. I've always been passionate about training and have a little bit of experience with injuries. Some of the ones we're going to talk about too. Especially so. And yeah, known NASA for a little bit now, like 3 years, yeah?
Yeah, I think, yeah, since freshman year I've known you, since freshman year.
Right.
Crazy how much shit has changed then. And why don't you go ahead and tell them your lifting numbers, because I just find that impressive anyway.
I'm sorry, that kind of broke up a little.
Why don't you go ahead and tell them your lifting numbers, because I find that pretty interesting too.
Cool, yeah. So, so for squat, I hit 445. Whether or not I can hit that right now, like probably not.
Yeah, after quarantine, I feel that.
Yeah, exactly, dude. Bench though, I think like due to like just only really having kind of the big three to work with, my bench went up. So I'm benching 315 now, and then deadlift definitely gone down, but at its best it was 585.
I got you. And how much do you weigh?
I'm like 162, 163 right now.
Nice. And you didn't mention this, but you're also on the powerlifting team at URI as well.
Yes.
And you have a background in sports, like you used to play football in high school, right?
Yep.
Okay, got you. And how many times have you competed at this point? I just want people to get a better understanding of exactly how much you know about strength training.
Right. So I've competed in 2 powerlifting competitions. Not a lot, but I kind of took my sophomore year to really build. Kind of dealt with some injuries. I was planning on competing twice this year, actually. And then nationals, for collegiate nationals, kind of got canceled. So that's up in the air.
Mm-hmm.
I ended up getting injured in the fall. So that kind of pushed me back from that November meet. Usually that's like the collegiate cup. So that's when like all the kind of new and upcoming freshmen that are on the team kind of like take their first meet. And that's always a great meet to be at. But with regards to kind of my experience, I've always just been really passionate about it. Probably started pretty similar to you in high school, just watching YouTube videos, just loving resistance training. And then I got into college, kind of pursued a major in regards to it, taking a few classes. I'm planning on taking KIN 414, which is like advanced strength and conditioning, and hoping to kind of acquire my CSCS postgraduate through that class. But
that's strength and conditioning, right?
Yep.
Okay, got you. Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, so let's dive right into it. So I know you wanted to make your first point that strength training is it's kind of like almost like a pyramid, and you do have to use some sort of pyramidization in order to use it. So why don't you go over exactly what definitions you found? And by the way, most of the things that Nabbas says are research-based, and some of the things are just opinions that we have and it's not just like general opinions, it's like things that we have tested on ourselves in our training methods. So it's not something we're just pulling out of our ass. So either way, there's some sort of research backed up into what we're saying.
Right. Yeah, and I completely agree with that. We always try to stay kind of like evidence-based as we can, but based on kind of like textbooks that I've read, I've came to the conclusion that the best definition of periodization is quote unquote the strategy to promote long-term training and performance improvement with pre-planned systemic variation in training specificity, intensity, and volume, which is organized in periods or cycles within an overall program. So that was proposed back in 1960 by Leo Mateev. Probably didn't pronounce that right, but some Russian guy. Russians are pretty big into kind of periodization too.
They kind of made lifting like how competitive it is today, kind of. Even though America is very, very good at it, they just like kind of started the initial burst to like bring strength and training like into the world.
Right. I think like with the Olympics too, they were like really big back in the day, but obviously there's all those scandals and stuff. I don't know about it with drug use and that kind of being hidden up. I think there's like a Netflix documentary about it. I've been meaning to watch it, but haven't gotten around to it yet.
That's a fact.
So more so into like periodization, kind of strength training. So you have this thing called GAS, which is just an acronym for General Adaptation Syndrome. And you kind of have 3 phases to that. So you have the alarm phase, resistance, and exhaustion. And just kind of generalized The alarm phase is going to be more so like the initial stimulus, in which, especially if you're an untrained individual, or even if you're like a detrained individual, like a lot of people now, it's going to be that initial stimulus to kind of like ramp things back up. And then you kind of have that resistance phase, where you're just more so like getting into the groove of things, and you're adding like progressive overload. And then towards the end, like most programs, you're going to either maintain or you're going to try to peak, say for like a powerlifting meet. So that could be the quote unquote like exhaustion portion, where you kind of seldomly overreach. There's different ways to go about it, but simply put, you're just kind of putting in maximal effort. Then usually you deload for X amount of time after.
Mm-hmm. Well, basically, I kind of want to go back to the definition of pyramidization, but I know you wanted to explain exactly what the 3 parts of gas were, and that was a good explanation, by the way, really good. And so basically, what a lot of people do, and what I did when I first started lifting, is that they kind of just did random exercises and just thought if they went to the gym and, like I feel like I had a good workout and then left, and then they thought they were supposed to like gain muscle mass through that. But there's actually a very strategic way that you should go about it, and you should have like certain time periods of training for strength, and exactly just like make it into and train specifically, train with intensity, and everything that you said in the definition of pyramidization. Like you don't have to go on some sort of program, but you need some sort of structure. You can't just go in there and expect to do whatever and then expect to actually make strength results and be upset that you're not getting stronger because you're not training for that. You know what I mean?
Right.
So you have to train specifically for the strength. And once you start training for the strength, you should be seeing yourself going through these phases: the alarm phase, the resistance phase, and the exhaust phase. So, so why don't you continue with that?
Yeah, and I think you just made some great points. And I really want to go off of like what you said with regards to structure. Like, it doesn't need to be super specific. But when you're starting out, you're kind of gonna, especially if it's your first time, if you're untrained, you're gonna see results regardless, both in muscle growth and in strength. And those only
your body's not used to it yet, you know?
Exactly, yeah. And so I know plenty of people who kind of never really have too much of a structure, but everyone has like a generalized like what body part and or type of variation they're going to hit that day per week. So it doesn't have to be like down to the percentage every time, especially if you're not too serious about it. If you're just the majority of people, some typical like split should work, as long as you're just giving yourself enough proper rest in between days, and just making sure that you're kind of like having those deloads every so often. I usually go like 4 to 6 weeks every deload, so around once a month, once every month to a month and a half. So I think that's an important point that you kind of like bridged into that I wanted to go off more on.
I got you. And yeah, and I think, like I said, so I just think like overall, just like you said, you don't have to go super, super specific either. Like one of my favorite training splits, or if someone just asked me like, what type of rep scheme should I do at the gym? And I'm like, if you're not a client of mine, or if you're just looking for like general advice, and if you're brand new, I'm always like, you know what? Just hit these 3 compound movements, do accessory movements that kind of complement those movements, and do like a 5x5 for the compound movements. Cause that's a great way to start off for strength training. The 5x5 is classic.
Hard to find too. Did you start with it? Cause I started with it.
When I started training for strength, I found out about it and then I started using it. But the program that I first ran for strength specifically was actually a top set one. So it was like week 1 was like a top set of 5 and then back off sets for a 3x10. But honestly, that was a little more complex, but I think I would have just seen just as good results if I went on the 5x5. And that's what I use for a lot of my clients, especially if they're brand new to the gym. I'm like, hop on the 5x5. And if you feel like that weight was too light, then next week just keep progressing. And then the next week keep progressing, because it's easy to keep progressing on the 5x5. You know what I mean? So it's just easy to track. Exactly. And you have this graph right here that has time on the x-axis and then performance on the y-axis. And you want to explain that real quick with the alarm phase, resistance phase, and exhaustion phase? I might be able to put a picture of it in here at some point, but
for sure. So like, I'll do my best to kind of explain it to you guys. So you have performance here, time here, performance over time. So alarm, you kind of have that initial stimulus, the body adapts, and then you kind of get into that resistance phase. you're adapting pretty well. And then, like I said, that exhaustion phase, especially if you just kind of don't properly load and progress, that should be around when you either maintain or peak. So over time, your body's going to kind of just fall off if it's getting too, like, quote unquote, overtrained in the short term, which is called overreaching. So you want to kind of use that phase to peak and or maintain, and that's why performance drops off towards the end of that.
Yeah. Can you explain a little bit more on the resistance phase? Because I'm seeing a huge increase in performance in that phase, but I thought that was the alarm phase. So can you explain that a little bit real quick?
Yeah, so I think the alarm phase, the reason why you have that initial dip is because when you introduce that new stimulus, I know me personally, a lot of people, if they haven't worked out before, if they've been detrained for a very long time, then they get very sore initially, and whether or not due to like
Makes sense. Mm-hmm.
mental things, they want to back off a little bit, or just because they're too physically sore, they don't want to push too hard. So they're going to progress a little bit, stall, and then they get used to it, the body adapts, and then you kind of have that gradual increase over time in the resistance phase.
Mm-hmm. I got you. So basically, in the alarm phase, you're so new to it that your body is going to be sore. Because I remember I used to get really, really sore from workouts. Like if I were to do a workout that I do now, like 5 years ago, I would be extremely sore and maybe not even train the next day. So what you're saying is through that resistance phase, your body adapts way better, and it's not going to be as sore, and it's actually going to recover faster. So the performance overall is just going to increase more. Is that what you're saying? Just clarify.
And that's generally will go for anyone. The more advanced people, like obviously those periods, especially the alarm phase, is probably going to be a lot shorter.
Mm-hmm.
Just because the body's more used to it. It really depends at that point, kind of what program you're going into. So, but definitely for the majority of the population, especially those starting out, I think it's pretty accurate kind of representation of what you can expect.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I got you.
Yeah.
And yeah, actually, now that I think about it, like soreness really does have a big impact in your performance. Because, like, I mean, if you're doing like if you're squat once a week and then you start doing twice a week, like if I add that extra squat day, like I'm going to be more sore for my other squat day. So until I run 2 squat days a week for a few weeks, I don't think I'm going to see a crazy progress because it's got to adapt to it.
Right.
Because I know I'm going to be more sore, so my performance might be hindered a little bit in the beginning, but over time, I'm just increasing volume and overall just going to be increasing my strength in general because it's going to be recovering faster and it's just getting more stimulus overall.
Yeah, for sure.
If that's just like an example of maybe just going into a resistance phase almost.
Right. And I think squats is like the perfect example. I know like most people when they start squatting or increase their squat volume always get sore for the most part. So I think it's a very good example there.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And I see you got a little gym there. So why don't you explain how you've kind of been able to maintain or even maybe increase your strength throughout this doing at-home workouts and stuff like that? And what advice would you give to people who are trying to gain strength while they're at home, even though they may not have a bunch of equipment?
Yeah, so I think the most important thing is just do whatever you can with what you got. Recently, over the past few months, I think volume overall, as well as frequency, has played a large part in a lot of people's training. So I know personally for a while, I'm very grateful to have it, but I only had 275 pounds, so I do sets of like 10 to 20 on squats. Obviously bench a lot lower, deadlift around the same for squats. But even if you don't have anything, you just have like bands, just working high volume stuff, circuits, decreasing rest time, all things that will help you, that are the best way to kind of like help you get stronger, not in the most traditional sense, but it'll at the very least, increase your fitness, which is something that I feel like a lot of people who are very serious about lifting and powerlifting in general kind of overlook. So that's why I'm like kind of a big advocate for concurrent training. So just kind of throwing in aerobic cardio work alongside resistance training. But for sure, volume, high volume body weight work is probably the key right now to maintaining and just trying to do the best with what you can during quarantine.
And you can apply this model to at-home workouts as well. Like what we just said with adding the extra volume for squats, like you can do, like just take, for example, push-ups. You don't need any equipment to do push-ups. you're doing push-ups maybe twice a week, and your chest might be growing, but then your chest just stops growing, then just add push-ups maybe another day in the week. Just add more volume, and you're gonna start getting more sore. Like you just gotta start. You gotta keep progressively adding more exercises or adding more volume. But especially with at home, like since we don't have the weight, volume, like you said, is key over everything else right now because we don't have the weight to be, like obviously I only have I have a barbell with 40 pounds and 2 resistance bands, and that's it. And I've been making it work. Like I feel like I haven't really lost muscle mass. If anything, I feel like I've gotten I focus more on getting leaner because I feel like when you're bulking, it makes the most sense to try to get the strongest and you want to be lifting the heavier weight, Yeah. Right. And I just feel like right now would be, not only is it summertime, so now it would make more sense to like maybe lose a little bit of weight, but it just like, your training could be best tailored to that. Cause like you said, like circuit training is best. Sadly, we're going to have to add more cardio like into our routines. But that's just like a general thing for trying to cut down body fat anyway. So you were going to have to do cardio anyway, but now you just have to do it from home. So yeah. And actually you're pretty big on cardio, surprisingly, for a guy that's very, very into strength training. Cause didn't you run like a marathon, not like an official one, but you ran like a test marathon or some shit, right?
Yeah. So, for a little while, like we were talking about, two very passionate people about fitness, and I kind of wanted to explore this new realm that I haven't really gone into, which is kind of long distance running. So me and one of my friends, we would progressively like increase our mileage per week. So I actually started off like 2 or 3 mile runs back in March, which is kind of when this all started. And it started in the woods for hill runs because initially I was training for the Spartan race, which unfortunately isn't happening anymore.
It's canceled, right?
Yeah.
Damn.
Which is unfortunate. I know a lot of people have been like texting me like, "Oh, we still doing this?" I just don't think it's gonna happen.
Just make our own Spartan race, bro.
Yeah, right.
We'll get a bunch of lawn chairs and we'll just make people jump over them.
Just get tires, dude. Like find a nice river, we'll swim up it or something. Yeah.
I'm telling you, it's doable.
Right.
We should people to donate some pools. We'll make some mud.
We could honestly just find a mountain and we'll be fine. Like, but yeah, no, it's just like something else to kind of fill that time. Because at that time I wasn't working either, so I just needed something to fill my time with, and I found like a lot of just de-stressing, kind of like peacefulness in running. Because once you got kind of past that wall, you just feel really good, and I just wanted to keep pushing that. So one day, I kind of decided. I got back to my house. I hit like 23 miles. I was like, "Oh, dude, like I might as well finish this." So I just because
my just casually ran 23.
So low.
Like shit, might as well just run the marathon.
Yeah. But I don't know. In hindsight, probably not the best kind of to my feet, but yeah, I guess I could say I did it now. So happy about that.
That's what's up though. Like damn, like the most I've ran without stopping, I think. Look, and be honest though, during that marathon, did you ever just like stop and walk? Because I feel like a lot of people think that people just keep going the entire time. Did you stop at some point? Like just walk for a little bit or increments at some point?
To be completely honest, I know a lot of people do. The way I ran it was I ran it very paced out. So basically at the start, the pace is very slow, but by the end of the race, if you want to call it that, it was the same. So the only stopping point I had was at the 23-mile mark when I just drank the Gatorade and then I went back. So to answer your question, no, I probably should have, but I did not.
That's some animal shit, bro. Because even during the 6-mile runs, I have to stop at some point, man. I don't know how you. I don't know. I feel
like a lot of people that run like what? Do you know what your paces are? Is it like beneath 9?
I've been trying. So this is getting a little bit off, but like I don't mind talking about it because I feel like it's still very relevant. I'm sure a lot of people run anyway. Usually, at first when I started running, it was I tried to do the first mile the fastest, and then everything was kind of fucked up for the rest of the runs. But lately, I've been taking it slower, and I'm seeing the paces are more consistent with each mile. So for long distance running, like I'm trying to do like not if I ran 6 miles, I think my average was like 9:30 or something like that. Like
Yeah.
I'm really not great at running, but like I'm trying to slowly get better at it. So,
No, that's a good pace to keep. Because I was also like looking into a little bit of research and literature on it. You
mhm.
kind of like keep your heart rate at 145, and a good way to kind of like test that out to make sure you're doing it is just have a running partner, and if you can keep a conversation with them, that is usually where your heart rate's going to rest. And for me personally, that's around like a 10-minute per mile pace.
Mhm.
So it may not be too good in under like X amount of miles, but once you reach those higher levels,
Mhm.
it starts to pay off, and your recovery is just it gets up there for sure. So
Last thing I want to say about the running.
yeah,
So I have found, at least for me, if you really want to try to get better at running, but you don't want to sacrifice your lifting, I would say run at most 3 times a week. That's what I do typically. I only run 3 times a week, and I train at home about 4 times a week. So, and sometimes those days will overlap, but one
right.
day I take is the endurance day, and it's like a talking pace.
Yep,
So it's nothing is like crazy strenuous, but it's obviously strenuous overall just because it's a lot of running.
yep,
And
yep.
another day I'll do like a 1.5 mile to 2 mile run, moderate pace. So it'll be like a 7:30 to 8 minutes, and like 8 minute pace. And then another day I'll just do straight sprint intervals like 4x100s, 4x200s, something like that. So I don't know. I found that was a really good way to split it up because that way you can get a taste of every single type of running, and
Right.
you can still increase. You can still get faster from that, and you can still get endurance. But if you're training for like a specific marathon or something like that, make it all endurance. If you're training for being faster, make it all like sprint intervals. But I think if you're just an average person just looking to get into running and get better at everything overall for running, that's what I've been doing. Just 3 times a week, just trying different paces for each day.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to split it up. You're hitting all those different like metabolic variables.
Mhm.
Definitely a
Yeah,
good way to.
facts. All right, so let's move on to you have key terms written down. These are periodization cycles. So why don't you explain these over here?
Yeah, so with regards to kind of the cycles that go into periodization, the largest one that you're going to have is the macro cycle. And that typically is the entire training year, but it also may be like a few months. I know Olympians, since the Olympics is like every 4 years, their macro cycles are a lot bigger. So those are around 4 years per macro cycle.
Wait,
And
their training cycles are 4 years long.
yeah, so like the
They have
overall
their whole program right now for 4 years.
broken up, but like yeah, that was like one thing I
Dang.
remember. I learned that these are all from my Kin 320 class. I remember when I learned that it was kind of absurd. Like you always hear about Olympic athletes training super hard, but I can only imagine being on kind of the same and or very similar plan with the same end result for 4 years straight.
And we're talking about all type of athletes here, right? We're talking like sprinters,
Oh yeah,
Olympic
yep,
weightlifters. Like we're talking like all around, all across the board. Their training plans are written out for 4 years ahead.
yeah. I would assume so, man.
Damn.
So that's kind of when they compete. Obviously, they have regionals and I think worlds, but the biggest one is the Olympics. So I think that's always they kind of just fit those other competitions into their training,
Hmm.
which is an interesting way to hear it, kind of go about it and progress. But
That's pretty crazy. A
yeah,
year-long training program. I couldn't. I mean, or even no. You said 4 years. I couldn't even imagine myself running a year-long program. Like
right,
usually, I find myself doing. And you're gonna explain these other cycles, but usually I
yeah,
find myself running like 4 weeks, and after 4 weeks of doing the same program, or I have the program set for like it's 4 weeks long, so that's like the length of the program, and usually I'll kind of just like um do my own thing for maybe 2 weeks and then run another 4 week program, do my own thing for 2 weeks, run another 4 week program, that type of thing. And I see I get results from that, but I
yeah.
mean these guys are Olympic caliber, so like I just that's insane. Like the longest program I think I've
No,
ever
it is
ran is
absurd.
elite.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I mean,
um
we're talking about the same people that kind of sleep in different altitudes just to get a slight edge. You know what I mean?
true. These people are just have a
They're on
talent.
another level. They're absurd.
They are. They are. Why don't you go ahead and explain the other cycles though, like the ones
Yeah.
that I was more so referring to.
So the next step down from the macro, you have the mesocycle. So those are like 2 or more cycles within that overall training program, and they're usually going to last about several weeks or months to a little bit over a year. I'd say if you're an Olympian. And those are going to be composed of like more of the generalized, just overall goals that you're going to have in that program. A little bit more specific than the macro cycle, but still not as specific as the next one, which is the micro. And these are like 1 to 4 week chunks. So usually you break up your deloads based off these, and depending on the program, you can implement different like transition phases. So usually you want to start off just basic linear periodization. You want to start off at trying to get a higher fitness level. So you're doing higher volume, lower weight, lower load, but throughout the entirety of that program, you're just trying to balance the intensity. So like microcycles, I'd say, is where the real nitty gritty specifics kind of are.
Okay. And wait, so are all these cycles within each other, or are all these completely separate, would you say?
Yeah, so you could think of it as kind of like you know that like Russian egg thing where it's like you just keep opening it up and there's like smaller ones.
Yeah. Okay.
So the macro cycle will be the biggest one. You open that up, mesocycle, and then microcycle.
Oh, okay. I see what you mean. So the macro cycle is kind of just like the long-term goal, basically.
Yeah. So it's like the overall program, and then you have the meso, and then you have micros throughout that. So like micros is kind of what you use to like base your deloads off of. So is like those like medium range goals that you're trying to hit within however long that program is. And the macro is kind of the overall, like at the end of the macro, you're going to be peaking or you're going to be maintaining.
Okay.
So that's
I got you. All right. And then that's focus on daily and weekly training variations. Oh, so here you have a note that says focus on daily and weekly training variations. You want to go a little bit more in depth with what that means?
Yeah, so within the microcycle, you do have those variations. And with regards to the weekly ones, it was kind of talking about how earlier where you're going to split up every week, either like a body part split or kind of like a push-pull split, just like very general things to kind of use as examples. So you're going to want to focus on those little variations, like I said, because the microcycle is the kind of very specific things. So one day you're going to be working, say, squats at a higher intensity. So say you're doing like a 4x3 at 87%, and you have a squat day that upcoming Wednesday, 2 days later, say you did that Monday, you're going to be doing possibly the same set by rep, but at a lower percentage, so lower intensity. And then so you can kind of just like play around with frequency and those type of variables within the microcycle.
And I wanted to add on top of that, usually when I'm like struggling with gaining strength on a certain movement, or I feel like a body part is lacking, I always make that the first training day of the week. Like if my legs are lacking, which they are, I'll make leg day Monday. So that's my first training day, because that way I can go all out on that and not have to make excuses if like, oh yeah, I'm exhausted from push day or I'm exhausted from back day. You know what I mean? Like, because that is my main focus. And if I put that as priority on the first day, I'm gonna go all out, because usually I rest on the weekends. Usually I rest 1 or 2 days on the weekends. So it would make sense for me to be fully prepared for the muscle group that is lacking. And if you're not doing that, I don't know. It's just like I feel like it's a very helpful tip that's helped me gain strength on my squat specifically. So, especially, so if anyone's struggling with like any movement, any specific compound movements or gaining muscle in a certain area, I would say just prioritize it on the first day of the week, and obviously increase the frequency as well, because I went from 1 leg day a week to 2 leg days a week. So I also find that very important as well.
I definitely agree with that. And I think going off kind of that like weak point, quote unquote targeting, I think that's a great idea and something similar that I've done in the past and kind of still try to implement. I do take weekends off like you, and kind of just whenever I have like space throughout the week, so say I'm doing like a Monday, Wednesday, Friday full body, I'll try to throw in like Tuesday, Thursday auxiliary day, so you can work on weak points, mobility, stretching, all things that as you kind of become more advanced lifter become more and more important as you're getting these kind of like chronic injuries over time, and things start to build up. So you really got to just kind of check yourself, check your progression. Like, what am I kind of feeling sore in today, or what can I work on? Like you said, legs. Most people, it's going to be like calves, forearms, traps, if you're looking more for like the aesthetic physique type of heel. So you can really fit in a lot of stuff throughout the week without kind of overworking. And like on those days that you're kind of doing auxiliary work, it's not like you're doing heavy compound movements. It's going to be probably high volume accessory movements, banded movements, body weight movements, and anything to really just open up mobility and help out accessorize those compound lifts.
And you said that your weaknesses kind of start getting exposed as you get stronger almost. Yep. Like I remember my friend once told me, he's like, you can tell a lot about someone's weaknesses just by the way they squat.
Oh yeah.
You know, like if they're leaning towards more one side than the other, then that one side is stronger than the other. If they're leaning forward, then that means their back strength isn't up to par. If and they also need to increase their ab strength as well. So like you can just tell a lot about someone's weaknesses and strengths just by watching them do a movement.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
100%.
So actually, I know you have a lot written out for the preparatory phase and all this stuff. Do you want to make one more key point on periodization? Because I kind of want to start going more towards the injury side. Because we already started hinting at it, and I think it would be a good transition period to start talking about our injuries and what we've experienced and how we've recovered from them.
Yeah, I completely agree. So kind of just one more thing to top off periodization. You do have those different kind of periods. So you have preparatory, transition, competition, and then you have the next transition. So within that, kind of, I don't know if you're going to put the graph up after. But
I could try.
Yeah, whatever, it doesn't matter. So kind of like just getting into that, I wanted to read off this quote, which is periodization is kind of the involvement of shifting of training priorities from non-sport specific activities of high volume and low intensity to those specific activities of low volume and high intensity. And you do that over a period of weeks. So that's kind of like the general gist of what's going on within the macro, meso, and micro cycles. So you're switching from those kind of like different volumes, frequencies, and intensities, then you're really starting to get down to, all right, what do I need to work on? If you're an Olympic weightlifter, it's going to be snatch, power clean, and jerk. I'm not exactly sure what it is. If you're powerlifter, squat, bench, deadlift. You can apply it to bodybuilding, just to like work on, I don't know, maybe chest, quads, and back. I just got to plug my computer and it's going to die out. But
no, you're good.
That was, I guess, what I wanted to say for the rest of the periodization is just there's always an overall plan, and within these kind of smaller phases, the week-to-week, day-to-day things, you can change things up, but the overall goal is always going to be the same. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And even if you're just like an athlete, you know what I mean? Even if you're not into powerlifting, if you're not into bodybuilding, like if you're just an athlete looking to increase performance, you can still take this model. Because being stronger is overall going to help your performance. No matter if you're on the football field, if you're on the baseball field, if you're on the lacrosse field, whatever, you know what I mean? Like this is very applicable to anyone listening to this podcast, you know? And if you're, like I said, if you're also just trying to look better, getting stronger will help you look better overall.
Right.
So, all right. But sometimes, not all the time, that strength will come with some nagging injuries that me and you have both gone through. And actually even I'll talk about this a little as we get deeper into this, but I even strained my back a little bit on my last long distance run, and I'll explain how lately I've been trying to, tailor my workouts to that and how I've recovered. And I actually do feel a lot better today. It was about a week ago, and how I feel like the whole process went through. How I went through the whole process. So why don't you go ahead and talk about your injury rehab or your injuries previously?
Yeah, so just staying kind of very basic with it. In high school, I hurt my back in football. They thought it was a strained muscle at first. Ended up getting a bone scan a year later. I had a syndrome called Berlotti syndrome, which is lumbosacral transitional vertebrae. So essentially what happens is those pieces of those smaller vertebrae in your back, your lower back, kind of fuse to your sacrum. And that fusion is what I fractured. So once I kind of found that out, took the appropriate amount of time off, and then got back into physical therapy, progressed from like a basic physical therapy clinic. I don't really think basic is like the best word of choice because they're great people there, and I think they can help out any type of population.
But they're not specific to any
right.
population.
Like they're more like generalized, and then I moved to like an athlete specific one after that. But yeah, both were great and both put me on the right track. So generally that is kind of what happened with my back injury. And you said you also had one as well?
Yeah,
right?
I've had I've had a few injuries in my life. In high school, I had a really bad ankle injury. Wait, did you have ankle notes too?
I don't have ankle notes, but I do have experience with ankle injuries for sure.
Okay. Well, I mean, we're gonna mostly focus on back injuries, but I did have a really bad ankle injury where I snapped my fibula in high school. I was on crutches for a few months, and I was on PT for about 3 months. I've had an elbow fracture, and I've also, just from lifting, I haven't really had a diagnosed back injury,
Yeah.
but I can tell when I have pushed the limit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I can tell when it's just like, okay, I should probably relax because something doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
I'm going to say about 2 years ago, I had a really bad back problem, and I had to start seeing a chiropractor. And after that, I kind of just started getting more knowledge about them. And then I just became more aware of what I needed to do to prevent them. And like now, just like recently when I had my if anything, it was probably like a back strain or something like that. But, when little things like that come up, it could really hinder your progress in the gym because then if you're injured, you're not training at 100%.
Yeah.
But now
especially
I know
in the back where it kind of takes over everything.
Yeah, exactly. And especially with all the compound movements that we do, we need our back to be in prime shape. Right. So, so now I just kind of want to share the knowledge that I've gained in helping not only prevent that, but if you do get back pain or some sort of back injury, you don't have to freak out, and we can kind of talk you guys through how we went through the process. So why don't you go ahead and kind of explain how you go about training with your back injury, or if you do train with your back injury at all?
Yeah, so actually right now, I'm doing like a slight back strain similar to yourself. A few weeks ago, when I kind of got more weight down here, I decided to do a deadlift set at probably 60 to 70% of my old max.
Which you haven't done in a while, right? I'm assuming.
Exactly, yes. Not smart. I thought because I was doing all that volume work prior that I'd be okay. Kind of woke up the next day and come to the conclusion that, similar to yourself, I've been seeing a chiropractor, and we both think that it's a strain of the rhomboid, which I can tell through functional tests. But just kind of training around it, I noticed that low bar squats, which is where you position it kind of on your rear delt, here will aggravate it because since it's a rhomboid injury, you're kind of bringing those scapula in to tighten up for the low bar position. And in that action, you're kind of activating the rhomboid. So on that right side, I always feel it getting more and more irritated. So I'm trying to switch over to high bar squats and or just add them in after kind of low bar squat sessions and training.
So lately, you just canceled out the back squats, the low bar squats, and you kind of put it in a position where it's actually comfortable for you. But you can still make progress on the squat. You're just not doing an uncomfortable position.
Exactly. Yeah, it's all about working with what you can do. Kind of trying to avoid the pain as much as you can. Definitely, like I said before, those accessory days are helping out a lot. A lot of crossbar rolling, a lot of that, a lot of stretching, and E-foot bench too, just trying to decrease an arch. And I know just because you trained heavy bench before too, having that arch and that leg drive kind of can affect your back sometimes. So decreasing that and definitely taking out a lot of back exercises. So I think I went 2 weeks without just hitting back at all. horizontal pulls at least. But,
And that's what you should do. Like if you feel pain in a certain movement, like this sounds simple and you'd think people like don't do this, but if you feel pain, like for example, doing cable rows, don't do cable rows.
right,
You know what I mean? Like no, like one of my roommates, we had like a good amount of we had like up to 225 at our house in Rhode Island, and he was like, Nasser, I'm starting to get back pain, dude. And he was doing like barbell rows, and I'm like, he's like, damn, this hurts. And then he just kept doing them. I'm like, dude, don't keep doing them if it hurts. But he's like, dude, I want to work out with you guys. I'm like, no, like don't worry about us. Worry about yourself, because if you keep doing this, you're gonna be in pain for a lot longer.
Yeah.
Like it's just not worth
It'll probably get worse too.
And it'll probably get fucking worse anyway. So don't do it. And I kind of want to explain how I kind of been working around the injury that I had recently. And again, it's not really like a serious injury, but I feel like a lot of people get this in general. Like they'll just get strains and just start freaking out and just be like, I don't know what I did to my disc or whatever. And so I noticed that it happened on my runs, my long runs. So first thing I did, I'm like, all right, next week, I'm going to take the week off from running.
Yeah.
So instead of running 3 times a week, I just walked 4 times this week.
Yep.
And walking is super, super underrated. People are like, oh, I don't know I can't run. Like, I don't know how to do all this shit. I'm like, well, why not just go for a walk for like 30 minutes? Burn some
Something's better than nothing,
reduce some inflammation, bring your posture back up as you walk. Just notice your posture, and that helps. And another step that I've been taking, I actually haven't really not been working out. I still am doing my regular workouts, but now I'm just including more. I'm doing like a lot more hip exercises because I noticed my hip is feeling a little bit weaker as that strain came as well. So I've been doing some single leg glute bridges, really just kind of isolating that one part. And it's not painful for me to do these movements. Yeah. If it was painful, I wouldn't do them. Right. But the fact that the pain is somewhat around there and it doesn't hurt to do it, I might as well just try to build a muscle up around there so it just feels stronger overall next time I try to go for a run. You know?
And that's a great idea, doing those preventative things. I think
and that's a tailoring and sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. And tailoring your workouts, you're tailoring your warm-ups to whatever is injured. For me, I found game changer. Yeah,
for sure.
Like if you're having lower back pain, do what are those called? I do a lot of downward dogs.
Reverse hyperextensions.
If you have one available to you, do some reverse hyperextensions. I used to do those at URI. I used to do those every day from home.
All the time.
People use that as the fucking like coffee table in the gym. I'm like, dude, this is the best machine in this gym, and you don't even know it.
Literally, and it's probably the most expensive one too. It's probably more expensive than the squat rack. Dude.
It honestly gets me tight that people use that thing for like a cup holder. I'm like, dude, if you started using this thing, your squat would shoot up 50 pounds. Yep. But instead, you're using this as a fucking coffee table.
Hold your drink, like. I'll always see that, and I'm like, yo, I'm gonna use this, and I'll just put it on the ground.
Exactly. And if anything, like it does, it puts your lower back in a strange position, but it just makes it so much stronger, dude.
Yeah.
And you can do reverse.
It's very healthy for the vertebrae too, because you're going from a kind of like stretched and position to extension into neutral. So you get that like decompression of the spine and you're working the muscle at the same time. So great.
And honestly, this was stupid, but at rugby camp, I was on, so we have bunk beds, and I was on top bunk, and I had lower back pain. So at night, I would just do reverse hypers.
I knew that was coming. I knew it was coming,
the people in the cabin, they were like, what the fuck are you doing? I'm like, dude, I got lower back pain. So I got to do some reverse hypers real quick. So you can do reverse hypers really anywhere. Yeah. Like you just need an elevated surface, and then somewhere for your, like if this is your body and this is your feet, you just need your feet to do this movement.
Exactly.
In the right position. I believe Louis
Simmons. Free dude, build a bench.
Exactly. And I believe, I don't know if you've seen West Side versus the World. Have you?
Oh yeah, great documentary.
Dude, I've seen that thing 2 or 3 times. Louis Simmons, I'm pretty sure he snapped his L5 or L4 or something like that.
Yeah.
And then he created the reverse hyper so he could go back to training.
Literally. And I think his strength went up after that. Like,
and his strength did go up. And right now, I believe the man can still deadlift like 600 pounds.
Yeah, and how old
he's
is
like
he?
73.
73. Okay, yeah. I'm not surprised. He looks like a raisin. I'll say that.
Oh, no, he's everyone in that gym is absolutely out of their fucking mind. But
they're absurd.
But if you want to go back to training, they just did what it took.
Right.
You know? So doing these little things, like, that's what it takes. Like, is it annoying? Kind of. Nobody wants to warm up for 15 minutes before they do their heavy ass squats. But you know what? Like, for me, I'd rather those 15 minutes before the workout are worth more than 4 months of me not being in the gym.
Yeah. And it's about building those good habits too, because like it might suck at first, but then you do it for a few weeks to a few months, and then all of a sudden you're like not even noticing it. You're going to the gym, you're doing like banded pull aparts and all this shit. 10 minutes passes by, you're like, oh, I feel good, but like I haven't even worked out yet. So exactly.
And when you go in, when you're like, when I go into my squats, like, I'm already sweating, bro.
Yeah.
I'm already sweating. And people go in there, and that's the first thing they do. I'm like, are you fucking crazy? Yep. I'm not putting 400 pounds on my back if I'm not extremely well warmed up. I'm not even putting a plate on my back, 2 plates on my back if I'm not extremely warmed up. Because I've had too many, you know, like, mishaps where I'm putting my body at risk to be out of the gym again for a long period of time. And I'm not trying to do that.
And personally, I mean, it might be a little slight tangent, but with regards to warming up, I used to go to a gym that had a sauna. So I would always go in there before my workout to do like my banded warm-up routine for like 5 to 10 minutes at like 180, 200 degrees. And I'd be there in like full gym gear with like my belt and everything. Guys would just be looking at me, and I'm like, hey, man, I'm not trying to get injured today.
They're like, who the fuck is this kid?
Yeah.
Like, who the fuck is this jacked kid? But it's cool.
Yeah, I missed that, Jim. But yeah.
But it's cool then, because then you go out there and then you deadlift 600 pounds.
Yeah.
Almost. They're like, maybe I got to do that now.
Yeah. All of a sudden, like, sauna's packed. There's like a line. It was great, though. Like, because you said you would be sweating by the time you get to working out. And I remember, like, coming out of the sauna, dude, I'd be drenched and I hadn't even started.
Exactly. Like, you gotta, like, warm-ups is extremely important for any injury prevention. So crucial, I think. Yep. Especially, like, I haven't been doing the same warm-ups that I've been doing at the gym because I'm not lifting as heavy weights, so I don't have to spend as much time really worrying too much about, like, if I'm going to get injured from heavy weight, because I don't have any heavy weight. But if I'm at the gym and this is, honestly, if you're going back to the gym and you're listening to this, like, this is a great time to listen to this, because now you can start getting your warm-up routine and maybe just take some of our advice. So, and you said you have a banded, like a banded cable, like, warm-up routine. So why don't you run?
Yeah, so it's just like 30-pound resistance band. I'll do like horizontal pull-aparts, vertical pull-aparts, and then kind of like if I'm working triceps, like say bench, I'll either throw it over something, do push-downs or overhead extensions, do squats with it too. And yeah, you can like lie on the ground, just wrap it up in your hands a little bit, do presses, but preferably I think push-ups work a lot better. So yeah.
Absolutely.
Throw it around like above your knees too. Do some squats, work your abductors. I found something, because you sumo deadlift, right?
Yeah, I do sumo deadlift. Yeah, preferably. I might switch back to conventional, but we'll see, because I don't know. I need my ego a little bit there when I get back to the gym, man. I need it.
Yeah. Hey man, I get it. Well, being a sumo deadlifter, I'm sure you felt those like first 2 weeks of sumo deadlifting. At least for me, my hips, I'll be sitting in class and I would like move them, and adductors and abductors were just so sore that it was like painful, which doesn't sound good, but like I said, I got used to it and I kind of incorporated a lot of banded hip work into my warm-up routine, especially.
That's a fact. So you felt some type of pain, you felt soreness, and you realize, okay, maybe these muscle groups aren't as strong as I need them to be. So maybe you don't even have to do abductor work specifically, or adductor and adductor work specifically in the workout. But even if you just throw them in your warm-up routine, they're going to get stronger over time if you do that consistently. You know what I mean?
You're
Like
gonna open
now,
up mobility too,
Mhm.
like everything. Everything's gonna
like
get better.
now, like now every time I do sumo deadlifts, if well, I haven't done sumo deadlifts in a while, obviously, just because we've been
Yeah.
on lockdown and stuff.
Yeah.
But every time I did have them, I would do the adductor, hamstring curls, leg
Yeah.
extension, sometimes even step ups,
Yeah.
some body weight squats. Just get everything loose. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that
Exactly.
really
Yeah.
and that really did prevent me from getting injured, because when I was 18, conventional deadlifting 405, that's when I kind of fucked myself over with
Yeah.
my back, because I didn't know how to properly warm up, and I had weaknesses that I didn't know about. But now I know those weaknesses. I warm them up properly, and I
Yep.
condition them properly. So now injury is just way less likely on my back. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Exactly.
So is there anything specifically that you wanted to say about lower back injuries besides what we said so far?
Yeah, so I guess to kind of cap off back injuries, I think it's important. So going back to those 2 physical therapy places that I went to, the first one I started off with just basic isometrics. So just chair extensions, isometric holds, and a lot of stuff like that, side planks, regular planks, obviously, physio ball planks. And then kind of once you build that foundation through isometrics, this is more specifically if you're like injured, you kind of progress into those dynamic movements. So you're progressing into deadlifting, you're progressing into squatting. And I know a lot of people are intimidated to deadlifts, and I was at first too, because you hear all these injury stories about it. But honestly, I think that the deadlift is the one thing that definitely saved my back and probably got me back into being passionate about lifting. Overall, definitely my favorite exercise. You can classify it as full body. It's going to work really almost everything, and very functional movement. So very important.
That's interesting that you say that. That you say it saved your back, deadlifting.
Yeah. Oh, 100% did. Yeah.
And can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah. So with regards to the primary muscles that are worked within the deadlift, obviously it's going to be, especially conventionally, posterior chain focused. So you kind of get the hamstrings, glutes, and then you get the paraspinals. Probably a little bit of the quadratus lumborum, but that's more in like lateral kind of flexion and rotation. But you're getting all that work all the way up to the traps and the rhomboids, which kind of just stabilize your upper back. So I think by kind of properly progressing through those movements and overloading the deadlift, my back just got so strong to the point where the injury that I had, although it may have been healed, it was still kind of prevalent at that point. But I built up so much strength that it didn't matter. And a very important thing about injury recovery is building back up confidence to go back up to whatever you were doing previously, whether it be a sport or competition. So it helped with confidence a lot. And it definitely helped, like you said earlier, just strengthening those primary and secondary muscles for activities. So
I got you. That's interesting, man, because like you're right. A lot of people do think that the deadlift is like the back killer.
yeah.
But people don't understand, like, if you train properly, it should actually be the back saver.
Yeah.
If you think about it like that.
Yeah.
And look, we're not saying like slap on your 1 rep max, day one you get back. No.
Yeah.
No,
That will, I guarantee you. I
that
guarantee
will fuck you over. That will fuck you over. No.
You will be out for months, but yeah.
But take our initial point from how we started this podcast with periodization, slowly get up back to that 1 rep max. Like, take your time with it. Have your back conditioned again. Like, when I go back to the gym, I'm probably not touching my 1 rep max for 2-3 months, at least, because I need my back to be conditioned again to lifting the heavy weight. And I also need to get my form back. I need to make sure everything is on point in order for me to get back to my full capacity of deadlifting. So, and I just want to go over quickly my kind of back warm-up routine, because I do use a lot of cables too in my warm-up routines.
It's more like an in-gym, like an at when you have access to a full gym.
Yeah, even at the gym, I have resistance bands on me every time I go to the gym, and I usually have bands involved somewhat in my warm-up routine. So usually I'll do, check this one out, single arm, single leg cable rows.
Okay. All right.
So you're incorporating a little bit of stability in there, and you're
Right.
incorporating your back muscles as well. So that's really good. So do that for both sides. Some banded face pulls to warm up the rear delts a little bit,
Yep.
and also if you have any nagging
Great
around the
exercise.
neck area, you can also warm up. You can also warm up the upper back a little bit more. And if you're having some lower back pain, I would say, I said this before, the downward dogs are really, really good. Reverse hyper, if you have one, I forgot what this is called. It's called, is it bird dog or something like that? It's like you put,
Probably. Is it one of the McGill Big Three?
I'm not too sure. It's like you put, so you're in an all fours position, and
Yep.
then you put one arm up, and then
Yep.
the opposite leg raises.
Yeah.
So you're hitting like directly on the lower back. So I
Yeah.
run through that as well. I also do banded lateral leg raises,
Okay.
which I don't see a lot of people do, because if you just are standing straight, and
Yep.
if your leg goes like this, you're activating this lower back right here, the lower back muscle group. So I do that. And it doesn't just have to be lateral. Like actually, people that come to me with lower back pain, and look, we're not physical therapists. We're just people that lift and kind of try to recover from our injuries as best we can.
Yeah.
And you can do lateral leg raises, you can do frontal leg raises, and you can do
Yep.
back leg raises on both sides. And that's one of my favorite lower back warm-ups as well. And so my warm-up routine, like I said, takes about, I'm say 10 to 20 minutes every time I go to the gym. And especially, again, like I said, if I'm lifting heavy weight, I'm going to be warming up my back very, very well, because I know that's somewhere I've had issues before, and I'm not just going to try to go 0 to 60 and
Yep.
just go all out. Like, no, I need to warm up. I need to be smart about it, and just go in there with a game plan. And we kind of gave you guys the rundown of how you can make a game plan with the periodization, and now you guys know basically how to heal yourselves if you have a nagging back pain. If you have a serious back pain and you can't walk, go see a doctor. But if you have something that you just feel like is a strain and you can still do your everyday things, and you just feel like maybe you just need some recovery time to see what happens, also then take what we said and just apply some of that. It could help a lot. Yeah.
I agree. Yeah. Warm-ups key. Don't forget them.
Wait, what's up?
Warm-ups are key. Don't miss them.
Warm up is the key. And
Do your fucking warm-up and do it right.
Oh, and last thing. I'm assuming you actually said before the podcast you had ice right next to you, right?
Yeah, I have it in my like little fridge right here with all my energy drinks. So yeah.
So why don't you go ahead and explain how people can. This is the last point that we're gonna make,
Yeah.
and we're gonna wrap it up. How can people utilize ice and heat, and when should they utilize ice and heat?
Yeah. So heat, obviously, you're gonna want to use it prior to exercise, so before. I would say even before warming up. So that was kind of my reasoning behind going into the sauna. Heat's gonna help increase blood flow everywhere. So it's gonna get all those nutrients to whatever muscle you're kind of working, and it's gonna help warm it up and get it nice and kind of quote unquote lubricated to exercise. And then after exercise, especially if you have an injured area, you're going to want to decrease that inflammation. Something interesting that I learned about recently when I was kind of researching stuff about plantar fasciitis is if you keep running on it and it keeps being painful and you keep it up that inflammation, over time, continued inflammation will actually bring in enzymes to break down the good tissue, quote unquote good tissue, within that area, instead of breaking down the scar tissue that it's there for. But it's not like it really knows the difference. It's going to break down what's ever there. So it's important to ice. It's important to rest. You have the stereotypical rice, so rest, ice, compression, elevation. So yeah, ice after workouts, bring down the inflammation. Don't want to ice too much. There's a lot of stuff we get into about that, about the detrimental effects of ice baths specifically, but definitely, if you have an injury, ice it after your workout, ice before you go to bed, and just really as needed, as you feel is best.
Mm-hmm. And you said heat before workouts, And I 100% agree with that because it helps warm up the muscles. And like I told you, like I usually like to sweat before I hit a workout anyway. So icing anything that you feel is tight, or if your back is hurting you, if your back is hurting you, put some heat on your lower back before you go hit your workout, so it's already warmed up and just feeling a little bit looser going into the workout. And then afterwards, if it's hurting, and even if it's not hurting, throw some ice on there just so it recovers and reduces the inflammation a little bit, right?
And heat also, I mean, heat isn't a bad thing after workouts either, because like I said, it can bring in that blood flow to the area, so you can bring in nutrients as well. It just kind of depends on like what you're recovering from. Are you like not injured and you just worked out and you're feeling a little bit sore and or tired? Like heat's gonna be fine. But if you strain a muscle, like you strained your back or whatever, you're probably gonna want to ice it. So.
All right, so ice for strains, possible injuries, and maybe just like uncomfortableness. But if you just feel like it's sore and you just want better recovery, but you know nothing's wrong with it, then go with the heat.
Yeah, heat's perfectly fine.
All right, word. All right, Nab, I appreciate you hopping on here, man. I think we gave some really solid advice throughout this podcast, and
I hope so.
And I hope people enjoyed it. Again, if you guys have your gyms opening back up, don't be stupid. Warm up properly. Have a game plan going into the gym, and just be careful. Just heading back in there full speed. Just go in intervals.
Yeah, completely agree, man.
All right. No, I got you, Naba. All right, man. It was good having you on here, and hopefully we'll be doing another one soon.
For sure. Let me know anytime.